What did another person do that accidentally turned you on? A few years back, I dated a pretty hot girl. She was a smoker and used mints for her breath. She would whisper or scream, but usually just whisper, "Oh freak," during sex. Fast forward a few years after that. One of my co-worker is a 45 years old dude. He smokes and uses mints. One day I want to show him something on my screen, so he leans in relatively close to my face and whispers, "Oh freak." Very confusing moment. Back in college I was hanging out with my co-ed group of friends in my dorm room. I think it was one of my female friends' first time seeing my room, because I remember her being interested in my stuff. She instantly saw the rubber ducky I had on my desk, picked it up, and started squeezing it at me, trying to be funny. I didn't know how to react, because while other people were laughing, I focused on hiding my erection. Nothing else came out of that friendship, but I learned to stop leaving my duckies out in the open when company came over. Senior year I had a trig teacher who was 24 and gorgeous. We got on quite well as student and teacher. One day, I was in a particularly shitty mood and tromping down the hallway. Someone called my name in a rather childish fashion, so I shot a glance that conveyed my mood. Then I heard my name in her teacher voice. I whipped around to face her, and she growled at me while making a claw gesture with her hand before telling me to smile. That growl. Oh man. I'll be in my bunk. I was working in a deli, promoted to shift leader. I made sure everything was managed for the closing shift. This plain looking girl named Jenny was one of my subordinates. She wasn't unattractive to me, but she was a co-worker dressed in uniform, apron, hairnet, so obviously not hot. I asked her to do a few tasks. She replied, "Yes, master. Boner time." Co-worker and I were really good work buddies based in Houston. We were both late 20s at the time. We were sent to another branch for a strategy meeting before they flew us and members of the San Francisco team to England. We flew from Houston to San Francisco. The next day a flight from San Fran to New England, Boston, then on to London. Basically a ton of sitting and being uncomfortable for hours. So she had some sort of arthritis and was having a flare up and was extremely uncomfortable. She said her legs and feet were driving her crazy on the first flight. Much later on the flight to England, she was on the verge of crying. I said, "What if I rub your legs?" She immediately said, "Please." Spent the next few hours watching a movie and rubbing her legs and feet. She was propped up against the window and had her legs in my lap. Raging boner for hours. The flight back she wore shorts and brought lotion out, asked me to go at it again. Raging boner. I was in middle school riding home on the bus. 4 of us in that bus were playing a truth or dare game from an iPad. One girl was dared to blow into my ear. We all thought it was weird and didn't understand why that was such a big deal. And then she blew in my ear and I immediately understood. Also, coincidentally, got a crush on that very girl shortly after. Me, male, and one of my female friends were at a party and we started to jokingly shit talk each other as friends do. I jokingly respond, "How dare you?" and pretend to give an indignant slap that, in reality, was little more than a pat on her cheek. She retorts, "No, how dare you?" and gives one back. Now we are doing fake slaps back and forth, but we start getting harder with the slaps and it quickly turns into a game of chicken. I was expecting I'd have to stop from cheek pain. The actual reason I had to stop was because when the game escalated and she gave me the first full force slap across the face, I got really turned on. Like, as soon as she struck me, instant hard on. It was a learning moment for Fibonacci fanboy that night. I was having a tattoo on my back. The tattooist, who was probably the least attractive bloke I've ever met in my life, and I've met some freaking corkers, put a blob of Vaseline on my back to dip into to use during tattooing. Every single time he got more Vaseline on his finger, it was like being touched on the clit. A rush of desire went through me. I could have banged him rigid there and then. Luckily I just bit my lip and let him carry on inking. Story time of my most shameful blowjob. I was kind of seeing this girl. We were into each other, but she was moving away. The morning she was moving she came round to mine, and we went for a drive somewhere. We were just talking in the car and she ended up crying. I hugged her and stroked her hair, and we ended up in a position where she was curled up in a ball with her head resting on my stomach face down towards my dick. Her crying and making me feel good because she was going to miss me so much turned me on, and I started to get hard. I was wearing jogging shorts, and she must have noticed a bulge appear, and she just whipped it out and started sucking my dick. I could feel her tears dripping off her face and onto my balls and thighs, and I'm ashamed to say it turned me on. I ended up coming in her mouth, and the sound of her swallowing my cum, sniffing back tears, and the feel of her tears still falling on me was amazing. She texted me later and said thanks for not stopping her, she wanted to lighten the mood. During a slow day at work, a female co-worker came up and started giving me a massage for no apparent reason and without warning. She was rubbing my shoulders, and although I was honestly a bit confused and somewhat annoyed that she would just randomly touch me without my permission, we weren't really friendly like that. It felt really good, so I didn't protest. As she was telling me a story, I decided to look up from my phone. The combination of her massage skills, cute voice, and eye contact made me insta hard. I got super embarrassed and worked vigilantly to get rid of it before she noticed. I think I succeeded, but I'll never know for sure. Edit. Didn't expect so many people to read this, so I just wanna explain a few things. It's possible the girl was into me and I missed obvious signals, but she is super flirty by nature and she has a boyfriend, so I didn't want to get involved in that drama. I was also madly in love with a separate co-worker at the time, which caused me to have ridiculously strong tunnel vision. Of course that didn't work out, but that's a different story for a different time. So, we were playing this game in some underground tunnels, where we had two teams which were competing to find an artifact inside of catacombs. If you came across a member of the opposing team, you were supposed to fight, and whoever ended up with their back on the ground lost, and had to go to the starting point and start again. But it somehow turned out that one team had mostly girls, and one overweight guy, and another team had mostly pretty fit guys, which wasn't particularly fair, but oh well. Anyway, when it came to fighting, of course, guys wouldn't literally punch girls or anything. They'd try not to hurt them but still win. So, there was one guy, and whenever our team would run into Thiz, he'd always go for me, and no matter how hard I struggled and tried to win, I'd end up with my back on the ground and him on top of me every time. It's like it was completely effortless for him. So, yeah, that's how I found out that I was into BDSM. Well, not really, I knew before, but this just confirmed it, cause every time I found myself on the ground with him on top, I just wanted to say freak me right now. Well, it didn't happen obviously, but I still kept remembering it and fantasizing about that moment for ages. I don't know if it did anything for him though, but I kinda wish it did. The year was 1995. The place was the Palace of Auburn Hills in Michigan. I was 13 or 14. My friend and I had tickets to see REM play a show that night. I was really excited to see them live. They were at peak popularity and this was their first big tour in like 5 years maybe. Anyways, we get to our seats and show is about to start. This woman and a group of her friends are a row ahead of us. She had short brown hair, a tiny waist, and very thick ass. Black leather jacket and jeans that looked like they were painted on. Didn't think much of it at first until the show started. I was then pretty much fixated on this big bouncing booty right in front of me for the next 3 hours. That was the day I learned I'm an ass man. I was seeing a girl from my local college. We were in the same class together and started talking. Fast forward a month, and I was at her place after we had gone out on a date that evening. We were on the back patio smoking and making out for a little while, and finally we decided it was best I go home, trying to take things slowish I suppose. Well anyways, as I'm walking in from her back patio, her roommate was in the kitchen putting plates and other dirty silverware in the dishwasher. I looked over the counter, and she was in her panties and the lowest cut shirt you could possibly find. Exaggerating. Try and imagine going onto Pornhub and searching down blouse. I shit you not, the real life down blouse happened boys. And freak me if she didn't know exactly what she was doing with her eat shit grin peering down the side of her face when she looked up and saw me staring. Missed opportunity because I talked to neither of them anymore. Oh well. I had a friend I worked with that I'd had and gotten over a little crush on. Then one day, when it was just the two of us up front in the store, she started going on about some very detailed math about capture rates in Pokemon. Hardcore stats about how easy or hard it was to capture a given Pokemon in a particular game, right off the top of the dome. I had never been more attracted to her in our 5-ish years of knowing each other than I was in that moment. Seriously had to go find work to do in the back room to calm down a little. I haven't even played a real Pokemon game in a solid 8 years, I think. Didn't get on the Pokemon Go train. Just a good looking, nerdy girl nerding out on something she's clearly super into was like poison ivy's love dust to me. When I was in college there was a fellow student who worked on the campus groundskeeping crew. He wasn't traditionally hot, but had a decent dad bod and this charming Georgia accent. Anyway, one day he was building something outside the girls' dorm, and it caught my eye. Other girls noticed too, and soon there was a little crowd of girls silently gathered around the window watching him do his thing. At one point he picked up this giant piece of fencing like it weighed nothing, and dropped it somewhere else. There was a collective sigh of appreciation from the room, and one girl whispered, "That was so manly." Her voice broke the spell and we all laughed, but I think we were all super turned on. Pretty late to the party, but here's mine. The left side of my back, just under my shoulder blade, keeps tightening up, and it's incredibly painful. After about 2 months, if just dealing with it, the pain became too great, so I finally swallowed my pride and went to the doctor. As I was sitting in the table being examined, the doctor ran his knuckle down my back a few times, checking different muscles and such, until he ran it down smack dab on the exact spot of my reoccurring back pain. The sudden pain it released, followed by a tidal wave of euphoria immediately afterward, causes me to let out some kind sound that was a mix between a painful grunt and a hypersexual moan. My face immediately goes red, and I apologize profusely. My doctor had a good chuckle over it and continued with the examination. I've never been into pain of any kind, but if that doctor had hit that spot one more time, I'd have been gay for a day right then and there. Girl I was talking to had water heater troubles. I offered to come by and take a look before she called someone that was gonna charge her something crazy to change a heating element. Anyway, arrived. I take a look at it to make sure it wasn't something stupid like a tripped breaker and all the connections were on right. Power going to all the element. Probably just a dirty heating element, which happens on 10+ year old electric water heater. While I'm in there fiddling with stuff, I'm explaining to her daughter what I'm doing and how things worked because she seemed curious. As I was leaving, a couple of fire detectors were beeping, so I told her the least I could do was change them out for her. I just need to go to my truck, I got a bunch for random tools and lights in it. Let me walk you to the door, she says. I walk to the door, and she presses me against the wall. Hand on penis. If you offer to fix one more thing in this house, I'm going to fuck you in this hallway. Coincidentally, there was light out in the hallway. I learned a little bit about myself that day. This is freaking embarrassing, so I expect the roasting. I love clowns. Not necessarily in a sexual way, I just love clowning and think clowns are neat, but when you adore something there's always going to be the weird crossover. So my friends force me to go through this house of horrors with them. I'm the biggest chicken ever, and throughout the entire thing I cried like a baby. Apart from the part where we get to this little circus tent. Suddenly Pennywise, this dude was supposed to be Pennywise, but was dressed as the most low budget version of him, jumped out at us. He ushered us into his little circus tent and asked us if we were having fun. At this point I've perked up because hey, I love clowns. Even scary ones. I shook my head though, because apart from this part, I had been hyperventilating to freak. Then he gets super in my face, not touching though they're not allowed to touch, and whispers you're supposed to say yes. Instant boner, clit boner, whatever the non-penis term is. He was an attractive young adult, so that definitely helped, but yeah, one of those weird welp I guess I want to freak clowns now moment. I was sitting on the train going to another borough in the city. Across from me was this cute Asian couple. The girl kept looking over at me between paragraphs, her, probably, BF was telling her. Anyways, a few stops later the carriage gets packed with a group of loud people who talk about drugs, violence, gossip, etc., and they are into what they are talking about, loud. As they get louder I notice the guy speaking less and less, and noticing the group next to him. The girl gets a bit nervous and catches glances with me more and more often. I don't really mind, because I've been around people like this my whole life. As they get louder, the girl grips the handle next to her and starts moving her hand up and down it while making more and more eye contact with me. By the last stop she was wiping her knee with her other hand and slowly lifting up her skirt and biting her lower lip. I was never so confused, aroused, and embarrassed at the same time. Like and subscribe for more edit videos.